Welcome to the Femininja Project. I am your host, Cheryl I Love, middle-aged ninja hiding in plain sight, dedicated to restoring human dignity one person at a time and helping you unleash your personal power. Discover that it's possible to look like a woman, act like a lady, move like a ninja, and think like a warrior. And remember, men are always welcome on the Femininja Project. Welcome to another episode of the Femininja Project. And you know, we are all about alternative health and healing and finding our personal power and exploring new ways of moving, thinking, and just finding things that help us live a better life. And today's guest knows a tremendous amount about those topics. Her name is Avital Miller. She is a speaker, author, and healing breakthrough facilitator. Her award-winning book titled Healing Happens inspires people to experience boundless energy, absolute happiness, and true success in order to live their best life possible. Avital is also a yoga and fitness teacher, trainer, NLP practitioner, and energy healer. I don't think there's anything she does not do. Avital, welcome. Thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. It is such a thrill to be here with you and to bring our connection in a new place and then also to connect with your listeners.
I am just so happy to have you here. It seems like forever since I've seen you, but of course it seems like forever since I've seen anybody. But just so our listeners know, Avital and I met in ballet class probably about 2 years ago. So I guess we met at the bar, so to speak. And just had an immediate connection, and even back then talked about having her on the show. So finally she is here. So tell us how you got to the point where you're doing all of these things, where you've written this amazing book. It's won at least 4 awards as far as I know. Got this incredible career as a speaker, a trainer, yoga, energy healing. How did this start?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking that. Because if you recall, I have an engineering degree. And right out of college, I started working as a program manager at Microsoft. But I very quickly realized, wow, this is a great opportunity and an amazing company with an amazing product that I still use tons of. And this line of work is not completely me. It's not completely what I'm passionate about. And I was following what I was set up to do from my childhood upbringing. And I was doing it like almost the best, right, that anybody could be doing, getting hired as a program manager at Microsoft straight out of college. And I couldn't quite figure out, what am I going to do differently? So I just quit Microsoft. And I'm young, but no, I mean, I went through this whole process of I'm interviewing and I'm not interested in these other jobs, but I had traveled for a couple of weeks backpacking and I'm like, you could learn so much about people. And that excites me so much if you just go for 6 months to a year, and that will give me the time to understand how I should change my future. Wherever I am, people kept approaching me to teach them yoga and fitness. So this is 20 years ago, about that long ago that all of this was happening. And yoga, people know about yoga, but they haven't all done it yet. So they're very curious. And there I am, an expert in yoga. So you have to also remember, I grew up as a gymnast and a dancer, and I majored in dance. So it was very easy for me to become an expert in yoga pretty quickly.
Got it.
And so I'm teaching that. I'm like, okay, that's my next career. And I become a yoga teacher trainer, and I become a fitness director, and I'm teaching 25 to 30 yoga and fitness classes all over town, known as the Energizer Bunny. And then let's get to the end. Then what happened? And then I started having health issues. I had a fever for a couple of months. I was teaching a spinning class and I turned flush white, and my students told me to go to the hospital. And my hair was falling out. My muscles were turning to fat, and I was getting weaker than the students. And then you can imagine sort of like the terror that comes in to, am I going to be able to continue this thing that I love, my career, actually have something to offer to these people that I'm supposed to be stronger than them. And I'm young to have all that going on. And it just took a while. I did what most of us would do, start going to the doctor. And it's, I think sometimes too, when you don't suppose that somebody's going to have an issue with something when they're that young. And I just had to keep pursuing with the doctors to say, well, what's really going on here? What's the issue? What's making me feel this way? And we come up with an autoimmune disorder called Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism. And what the doctors did was they gave me a large dosage of medication, a handful of supplements, sent me out the door saying, that's it for life. I'm just stuck with this. I kind of thought, well, it's sort of like, an arranged marriage, like you're stuck with that partner for the rest of your life. You might as well make the best of it. But there's also a part of me that just really strongly felt that I was meant to have a future of helping hundreds, thousands, maybe millions of people. And there's no way that it's going to be so deterred or end here. So there was just this voice inside of me saying, maybe these fatal pronouncements don't have to be our fate. And so I just start researching and reading online and reading books and going to all different kinds of medical practitioners. And I just kept asking, like, who are the best people in this area and that area, and just getting wonderful referrals. And a lot of these practitioners actually did both East and West type of medicine. So they didn't just come from this far out place, but they would acknowledge what's really good about all different paths of medicine and how do we marry that together. And really the Eastern medicine often includes an element that is a little more healing, in the sense of what caused this and what can we do to give you better health, not just treat symptoms, or do some workarounds so that you feel okay. And so it takes time to start doing these practices. And I start leveling out, which is a miracle when you're on a hormone medicine. And the next thing that happens is that I start meditating. And that, Cheryl, I don't know if you've meditated, but some of the listeners may have meditated. And that it makes you feel good, right? I mean, that's what you hear about if you haven't done it. After a couple months of meditating, not feeling well, I went to the doctor. It's like, well, it's because you're overdosed on your medication.
Oh,
we need to lower your dosage. Okay. So lower it, level back out, keep meditating more and more, not feeling well. Back to the doctor. Well, you're overdosed on your medication. We need to lower your dosage.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
I'm like, what? I mean, the doctor's never said this was possible, that you could do that. Like, what else is possible in life? And I'm shifting from medication to meditation. And I start hearing these stories of people who healed from terminal diagnoses. Now, I wasn't told I was going to die. I was told I was going to have this issue for the rest of my life, and it was going to be a huge challenge. But other people are told that they are going to die, but I'm meeting them years later after given 6 months or a few hours to live.
So your situation, your condition wasn't terminal. You weren't going to die, but you were going to have a miserable life.
Yeah, or at least this annoying thing, right?
It sounds a lot more than just annoying.
I know. Well, when it is for not managed, it is more than annoying. And then when you're on medication, it's still very up and down unless you change your lifestyle habits. And so it's very important to learn all these things that you can do for yourself. And it's okay. We just have to understand, that sometimes the doctors that we have are not necessarily giving us all of that other information as well. That hasn't necessarily been part of their training. But there's other people who can help us with that side. And most of the, sort of natural alternative healing methods don't conflict with what your doctor says either. So we don't need to worry about, trying this thing. It's generally not going to cause harm. But you can always go back to your doctor and ask, like, hey, can I do these things? But when we're looking at like so many repeated stories of people being told that maybe this fatal pronouncement has to be their fate, but seeing that it wasn't, well, what's really the truth here? Is there anything in common among all of these stories? That's where my book, Healing Happens, Stories of Healing Against All Odds, came about, was to really explore and go through interviews with all these different types of health and healing experts who have those stories for themselves, repeated it for their clients, and just say, what are these things? That's where I created the full body success mastery system. And it's fun because the success strategies get related to other areas of life, and how we do things in one area, we do it in another area. And what I like to say to people, for me and my healing process, I've traveled the world, I've hiked to the top of mountains. I was just telling Cheryl, I was dancing on stage last night. I've been able to do all of these things and just share so many gifts with people. And it's really looking at that, well, this doesn't have to be my fate. This doesn't have to be the thing that I'm stuck with, but what are the top things that are going to get me beyond this point? And then the understanding that in a way, life is cyclical, that if we're really living life with the intention of making it amazing, that we're always going to go through growth. And sometimes part of the growth, you hit challenge, like things don't feel good. Because when you're ready to move beyond something, that's when it doesn't feel good. I love this. I've been binge listening to Abraham Hicks this week to really understand the concept of sadness more deeply. We feel sadness when the object that we're focusing on isn't actually fully in alignment with who we are. It might have used to be, it might be sort of a circumstance that you're in with somebody, but it's not in alignment with who you're really meant to be and live in this world. And so it's important for us to take these processes that I've created with the full body success mastery system, and it's sort of like keep renewing it. Every time that something is coming up, it's like, oh my gosh, like there's like a growth on the way here. And the pain I'm feeling is something that I'm ready to let go of. And that is part of the physical challenges that come up too, because there's been so many times that physical challenges have been related to non-physical things.
Well, and I love the fact that you're relating that to growth, because the first thing that popped into my mind was growing pains, because every time, you do have an opportunity to grow and change, it's not an easy process a lot of times. And I think where some people get into the labels, going back to, this is your diagnosis, this is what you're going to have to live with, but don't worry, we're going to help you cope with it. We're going to help you manage it. And that's basically what happened to me when I was in my mid-30s and I had a horrible chronic pain syndrome, went on for over 2.5 years. And I was told, well, you're never going to have the life you had before. You're never going to have the life that you wanted. And they told me that I would never be able to do my laundry and my grocery shopping all in the same day, because I would end up being bedridden because the arthritis in my spine was so severe. And I looked at this doctor who told me that, and I said, well, you don't understand. I'm planning on going back to ballet class. And she laughed in my face and said, you don't understand that this is your new normal. You are a chronic pain patient. And even if you could go to ballet class, you're too old. And I was 36. And, I went home and I just hit rock bottom. And then it took me a few days to find my fighting spirit. And it was like, I'm not going to accept this label. I am not going to live with this the rest of my life. And I think a lot of people just feel that is the end. I've got this diagnosis. I'm, this is my future. This is what they're predicting. But you don't have to accept that, because I have seen so many people besides myself be able to turn that ship around and change and recover from things that are just awful. And I really do believe that we can heal from anything as long as we give our body, mind, spirit, and soul the right environment to have the opportunity to heal.
Yes.
And that's where I think a lot of things we get tripped up is when we are seeking help and we're keep being told, no, you don't understand. This is what you have. No, you don't understand. You have to accept this. And That's just not right. You don't have to accept it.
Yeah. And what I love too, what you're saying, I know it sounds crazy to say this, but it's like when you were at rock bottom, because what you were doing is it's like putting an idea onto yourself that was somebody else's belief that doesn't match who you are. And it feels rock bottom because it's not who you are. So you hit that point, you're like, no, wait a minute. Like it just, life can't be this. You know, I meant to go out there and speak and help thousands of people. Like, and this isn't supposed to be my life. How do I start manifesting what it is that I envision is a match for who I am?
And I want to go back to the meditation because this pops up all the time. And everybody, you know, I have all my guests, well, most of them do meditation practices. And I cannot meditate no matter what. It's just one of those things I have tried, and it's like, okay, the grocery list and blah, blah, blah. But I have found alternatives, two alternatives that really work for me. And one of them was Feldenkrais, because it's more of, I'm meditating through a physical means where it's self-exploration, and it's not somebody standing there telling me what I have to do or how to do it. And then the other thing that really helps me, it's kind of silly, I call it backyard TV, where, you know, I've got a beautiful big backyard and I have a little chair that I carry around the yard with me, put it in different parts of the yard and sit down and just look at the trees, listen to the wind blow, the birds sing, the wind chimes, you know, the sounds of the neighborhood. And it just calms my nervous system. It calms my mind, body, spirit, and soul. And it's just, to me, that is meditation for me.
Yes.
So
yes. I want to speak to that. And I love that you figured out, how do I make this work for me? And one thing I will say to people is that if you do want that sitting meditation practice, that sometimes it's just a matter of finding the right path, the right teachings of meditation. Because a lot of people who are in my program say, like, I was never able to meditate before, but because we do these very physical exercises before we even sit down, that already like relaxes and calms and gets things out of the body and makes it easier to sit. And training the mind takes time to not focus on the grocery list. But when you go through these techniques, it automatically turns off the mind. So you're no longer thinking of that grocery list. I just took a class on how to learn better, you know, how to work more efficiently. And so there is just a process that they talked about too, of training the mind. So they know now's not the time to discuss the grocery list, like remind me later, like literally just telling your mind that when you're in meditation. But what I want to say too, there's a couple things about meditation that a lot of people don't realize. And one is that it's actually a very masculine practice to sit in absolute stillness. And all of us have a different amount of masculine and feminine. You were asking me earlier about engineering and dance. So we'll talk also about that in relation to masculine and feminine, because I have a strong amount of both. But so masculine is sitting in the stillness. The feminine is the movement. It's the creation. It's change. And so, yes, like the Feldenkrais and you dance. And you're probably very focused when you're in ballet as well. So you're not actually thinking about the grocery list. But so just to understand that a sitting meditation practice is not necessarily for everyone. Now, if you're in one of those moments where you want to get really clear on your purpose in life, and having a purpose is the more masculine quality. And so sitting in complete stillness creates the space to understand that. You know, when I said that I hit a reset button over the last month, I spent a lot of time at home alone doing nothing, and not even doing very specific meditation techniques, but just being in sort of the stillness and the emptiness of life, so that I'm not getting distracted, right, by all the other things that happen in life. And I can really go into the core of me and understand the depth. There's a lot of reasons why we meditate and why we meditate at different times. You know, when you talk about the nature and the relaxation and like what it does to de-stress your body, you know, that's another intention of meditation. I mean, the other thing I'm going to say too with meditation, I guess, because I've lived on the extreme end by living in a yoga community for almost 7 years. And sometimes meditation can also be a withdrawal method of not living life. And so it's more important for us to live life well than necessarily to sit for hours in silence. And now for some people, that is how they're meant to live life, right? But for a lot of people, that's also a form of just withdrawing from living life. And so for everyone like you to sort of find a more natural balance of what is meditation for me? What do I really need to feel balanced in my life? And you've done a beautiful job of that.
Oh, thank you. Sometimes I wonder, because I do have a tendency to overdo almost everything I do.
Well, that's another thing, that we can always address, overdoing everything and why. And, you mentioned that I do neurolinguistic programming. And that is so fun to address things like that. It's just like, well, for what reason are we pushing ourselves to do so much? I love this because if people come to me and they just have one specific thing they want to work on, 1 or 2 sessions and they're done and they're making changes in their life. When people come to me because they realize there's many layers to the onion and they want to work on everything, they're going to work with me continually. But it's amazing to see people who just come with one specific goal and how quickly we can transform out of those things that block us or keep us in that crazy, busyness. And
it's not so much the busyness. It's more like every single thing that I've done in my life, pretty much, I was dragged kicking and screaming. I didn't necessarily go willingly, but even ballet. I mean, I started dancing when I was 20 years old, 19 or 20. And it was one of my cousins who dragged me into ballet class. And I kept saying, no, I'm not going to do this. This sounds really stupid. I'm grown up. And she says, it's fun. She was trying this beginning ballet class. We were in the same college. And I kept saying no. And she showed up on a Saturday morning with an extra leotard and slippers and said, you're coming with me. And it was like, okay. So I got hooked. And then, that was, oh my gosh, I don't want to say how many years ago, over 40. And, here I am now still dancing, still on, in point shoes and stuff. So it was like, I can't just take class. I have to really get good at it. And then it was the same thing.
Like do it fully.
Yeah, just do it fully. And even the same thing with, my martial arts, I did not go willingly, dragged in kicking and screaming, took my teacher 3 years to get me on the mat. And I said, okay, I'll take a few classes to just to prove to you how much I'm going to hate it. And then 10 years later became his first female black belt. But the funny thing, I never had my eye on the black belt.
Yeah.
I just had my eye on showing up in class and doing the best that I could and just learning as much as I could, because I knew that these were techniques and these were movement patterns that would really help me. So I just really wanted to embody it. And then all of a sudden, 10 years later, it's like, how did this happen?
There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's really beautiful to fully do something, to fully embody it, to fully feel it. And I think the only time maybe that something like that could be a conflict is just if it's keeping you from something else that you should be doing, or if there's a part of you that isn't actually loving that, then we start to question, well, is this the most balanced approach, to this activity? Is it okay to let it up a little and you'll still get a lot out of it?
Yeah. And I did have one of those moments a couple of months ago. We talked about that before we started recording, and it was like, I don't have to do this anymore. Isn't that wonderful? And just kind of like, let it go with love and appreciation, but we're not doing this anymore. So that was just it was a beautiful moment for me to realize that I could let go.
When our goals shift, when we were talking about that too, I didn't mention this, but also like with ballet and sort of when I came to Denver and I was taking ballet and I was taking this adult gymnastics program because I was just dead set on having a dance partner again and doing acrobatic tricks with them. When the pandemic started, and I actually did end up magically finding a dance partner during the pandemic, but I didn't like the experience of working with him. And in the process of working with him, I broke my wrist from something else. But so we couldn't really work to the same intensity, so I let that partnership go. And as I was healing, I just was asking, like, well, what does it feel like, to do it? What does it feel like to not do this? There's a sort of surprise that the idea of not doing it was a relaxation, and not a relaxation is, oh, I'm not stepping up to my potential or putting myself out there, but just like, oh, this might not be the right thing to focus on right now. And then with that being different, like, so I'm still performing, but they're not that technically challenging, the performances that I do, not compared to doing acrobatics with a partner. So it doesn't take the same level of training in order to do what I'm doing. So when I'm reapproaching ballet, I'm like, I don't need to be perfecting this to the same level, which then means this needs to be enjoyable, right? So if I'm going to a teacher where, I mean, they're doing great with all this technique, but I'm not enjoying the class as much, is this really what I should be doing right now? Should I just be finding something that is more fun and gives me the amount of training that I need for my goals right now? And it's really fun for us to create space for ourselves to see our goals change and then adapt our environment accordingly so that it really, can meet what we need at that time.
I think that is a key point that we just need to highlight. If you're doing something and you're really not enjoying it, then it's time to make a change, and it's time to do something else, or time to let it go and either reevaluate what you're doing. But even, I recently had a teacher who was very, she would get angry. She didn't want people to have fun in class. She says, you're here to work. You're not here to have fun. And I'm like, I'm over 60. I think I want to have fun in my life, and I don't want to do something that's,
yes.
I mean, at some point you have to sit back and say, this isn't worth it. And so let that go, found something else, and, have a lot of really fun and wonderful things that I'm doing that are still really challenging, but you get to do it with a smile on your face. And even there was a saying we had in Feldenkrais, one of my teachers in my training would say, you should be this close, a little hair's breadth away from having a smile on your face when you're moving. You should be enjoying it so much that you're just this close to a smile. And I thought, wow, what a concept. I mean, that was in the beginning of my training, so I had a hard time believing that could be possible.
Yeah. For me, because I tend to naturally be a very joyful person. And I was noticing, like, I'm not smiling as much as I used to in ballet. And just like, okay, so what is that about, right? What do I need to shift here to get that smile back? And, so I'm changing my ballet schedule, and I'm starting to take some classes that are not just ballet, because that's available online right now because of these changes in the world. And I know it'll be more thrilling for me, when there's more opportunities to take class in person. Being on Zoom isn't so thrilling to me, but there's still all these neat classes that I can do. And I love taking class in New York City. And I'm like, oh my God, New York City could come to me right now.
Exactly. I know this is something that we really didn't think of at the very beginning of the pandemic. All I could think of is, oh no, I have to stay at home for 2 weeks. I can't handle 2 weeks. And well, that was over a year ago.
Here we are.
Yeah. And here we are. But, it's like, okay, when they finally started offering some of the classes online, and I started taking them, and they weren't quite working out for me. And then I started to change my environment. I actually bought a floor, a dance floor, because I was dancing on cement with a thin layer of linoleum on top of it. And for anybody, that's just really not very user-friendly for your joints. But I was doing it because that's all I could get. But now, like I told you before, I'm taking with a group where the teacher is in Brazil, and one of the dancers is in the UK, and one's in Germany, and one's from Italy, and one's from Ohio, Dayton, So it's just awesome. Under what circumstances would I be in a situation where I would be able to dance with that many people from so many different areas and parts of the world? And we're developing a community. It's a feel where, hey, I heard you were having problems with this. How did that work out for you? Or, how's your cat? So it's really fun to have that kind of connection. It's just really, I never thought it would be this much fun. I really would like to have more room, and I would like to have a raised floor or a suspended floor, but hey, we make it work, right?
Yes. Yeah, we do. And it's really nice. I just see in your background right now, like the ballet bar and the floor there. And it's been fun over the last year watching other people who've been in the same classes with me, how their space has evolved. And I'm like, whoa, like this girl, she made her whole living room into a ballet studio now. Like,
oh my goodness. That's just so funny. I mean, I'm almost at the point where, except for the limitations in the space, I mean, I could do basement ballet for a really long time without having to go to the studio because I don't have to drive. I don't have to change clothes. I don't have to put on makeup. All I have to do, I don't even have to put on deodorant. All I have to do is, put on a leotard, walk down my stairs, and boom, there I am. So, all that energy I could save for ballet rather than fighting traffic.
Yep.
So, way to look at things from a positive angle, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So that in itself is a very healthy outlook. It's a healthy practice. But would you like to address that and how it affects like our immune system, our health in general, our mindset is just trying to take something that is not very much fun and something we really didn't want or didn't expect, and to be able to turn it around and find the flip side and find some of the many blessings that have come from this experience.
Yeah. Well, and that's actually even what I share in part of the Full Body Success Mastery program. And what we need to also acknowledge, I feel, is that there are studies that have been done on what happens to our molecules and our cells when we have a positive influence and when we have a negative influence. And then they tested this on water. You look at the molecule, if it had a negative word on it, a word that we perceive as negative typically, right? And you look at it under a microscope, it's a mess, the crystalline formation. When you look at a molecule that has been under the impression of a positive word, it's like a beautiful symmetrical snowflake pattern. So imagine that like a healthy cell versus a non-healthy cell and the difference of the way that they look and what the impact of our environment is. And that's also, it's so important when we get to those down moments to remember that can be harmful for our health, to sit in that space. And I always feel like one of the things that we can do, the best things we can do when we're in that state is sort of not be in resistance to it first, like accept that that's what's happening, like open the door, like, okay, this is what's happening, because that'll remove one layer of the pain. Sometimes we feel pain that we're in pain, but then figure out what you need to do, and it takes the exploration, like really over years, because there's so many different techniques out there as to what's going to help you get through that and getting support and get yourself to the other side so that you know what the purpose of that is. And the first Full Body Success Mastery tip is reason to live. And if you know Dr. Bernie Siegel, who wrote Love, Medicine, and Miracles,
I have two of his books right there in my bookshelf.
Yeah. So that's really one of the key things that he talks about. He's like, well, I was doing all this work with the cancer patients and, some heal, some don't. And then at some point I realized like, oh, well, the ones who are actually healing when we've told them it's terminal are the ones that are focusing on their reason to live. And the ones that are not are the ones that are not identifying a reason to keep living. So we talk about finding that silver lining, finding that positive attitude is like, well, what is the reason that we want to be healthy for? And make that a stronger force. This is what I call Avital science, because I have that engineering degree. But make the thing that you want to live for a stronger force than the force of the disease. And if things are aligned in like perfect, level of physics, this force that's stronger is always the one that's going to win.
I am so glad you brought that up, not only the force of physics, but about the molecules and the cells and how that changes under negative influences or a negative force. And that goes back to blood chemistry, the hormone secretion, that when you're staying in that negative space, that it really impacts all of that, all of your blood, the hormones, such an incredible impact on your body. And to be able to make that shift to come out of that and turn it around actually has such a positive effect on your health in a good way. So it's healing yourself through your mind. Tell us a little bit more about your program and how people can find you, get a hold of you, get started. Take it away.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with one of the best introduction programs is how to energize your life. And these are the 3 keys to tap into unlimited energy. The energy topic seems to be, some of people's most favorite topic. And as I mentioned, I used to be called the Energizer Bunny. I had to figure out, how do I get back to that state, right? When we start dealing with fatigue, when we start dealing with disappointments in life, and we don't feel as energetic, when we're just not feeling well one day, but we've got all these things we need to do. How do we quickly shift our energy to match that? So the idea is I love giving people those tools to instantaneously shift their energy and to have more control over it, understand where being energetic comes from. So that's what's included in that program. And that is a free webinar. So it's an intro really to the energy program. And if people go to unlockunlimitedenergy.com, then you can register for the next webinar that is happening on there for the unlockunlimitedenergy.com. But yeah, I have a slew of meditation programs, of healing programs. I'm offering in-person programs, and I'm offering group programs online, and also working with people one-to-one. People have really taken up the neuro-linguistic programming. So there's definitely quite a few ways in which you can interact with me. We mentioned my book, Healing Happens. So you just simply go to healinghappensbook.com. And that automatically takes you into my Healing Happens website. So you'll see some of the other resources on there. And then another easy way to connect with me is just to email me, info@avitalmiller.com. It's Avital is spelled A, V for victory, I, T for talented, A-L. Miller is spelled like you've heard Miller, M for mother, I-L-L-E-R.
Excellent. Is there anything else you could leave? You've given us so much incredible information, so much to think about. Any final words of wisdom or pearls of wisdom you want to drop on us?
I want to, because I was meditating on this beforehand, one of the top things was just to realize the cyclical nature of life and to just always create space for that new exploration to happen. But another one is often our main problem is that we think we have a problem, is that we think there's a problem with what's going on. And that's why I said, the first step of when we're in one of those down moments is just to acknowledge and to accept that it's actually okay. And to realize that this is often a sign that you're in a process of growth. You're not going backwards. It seems like that because you're just ready to move beyond something. And that old thing feels horrible because it's no longer you anymore.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here, Avital. I have just loved seeing you again and having you on the show. You are truly the Energizer Bunny. So
thank you.
And everybody, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. And make sure you check out Avital's book, her website, her programs. She obviously has a lot to offer. And remember that there is a cyclical nature to life. Remember, sometimes if you're not feeling very comfortable or experiencing some pain in your life, it might just be a time to make a change. You might be going through a growth pattern, and that is a really good thing. So you might want to connect with her so she can help you through that. And that is the way of the Femininja.
Love it.
Thank you. And that's a wrap on another episode of the Femininja Project. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, be safe, be strong, and until next time, bye now.